Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I thank my colleague and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Huizinga, for yielding time for me to speak on what I think is a very important bill. I rise today in strong support of this bill, the bill which is entitled Building Up Independent Lives and Dreams Act, also better known as the BUILD Act. This bill is proof that even in this chamber, we can rise above politics and let common sense prevail occasionally. I'd like to first start by thanking my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who have worked with me and my staff to make this a very strong bipartisan effort. I appreciate my colleague, Mr. Sherman, who just spoke, for negotiating reasonable changes to the bill and for being an original co-sponsor. I also want to thank Ms. Tenney, Ms. Velazquez, and Mr. Budd for their work and for co-sponsoring the bill as well. Mr. Speaker, the Dodd-Frank Act required the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection to combine the TILA loan estimate and the respite closing disclosure forms into one integrated form, as you have heard, is called the TRID. While the TRID forms were well intended to help ensure that home buyers receive essential information about the costs and terms of their home loan, the TRID rule has some unintended consequences on nonprofit organizations such as Habitat for Humanity. The TRID rule is a whopping 1,888 pages long and is very complicated. The forms include selections on balloon loans and adjustable rate mortgages, things that may be relevant to traditional mortgage lenders, but are not applicable to nonprofits that solely offer low-cost housing to needy families. The complex and complicated TRID forms cause confusion to Habitat home buyers, staff, and their volunteers. Besides the complexity, the TRID disclosures require software for lenders to be able to fill them out, which has been too costly for many local Habitat organizations. The vast majority of the more than 1,200 local Habitat affiliates nationwide are small, community-based organizations with very small mortgage portfolios and few, if any, full-time staff. These organizations have experienced challenges with the cost and complexity of these new mortgage disclosure forms. To address these problems, the BUILD Act relieves charities from the cost and the complexity of the TRID rule, but it ensures that the terms of these mortgage loans are disclosed. Currently, all mortgage lenders making 5 or fewer loans a year are exempt from TRID and instead use the same mortgage disclosure forms that were in place before Dodd-Frank. The BUILD Act simply extends this exemption to nonprofits, which are eligible for tax-exempt charitable donations and are making zero-interest mortgage loans, regardless of how many mortgage loans they are making per year. The BUILD Act will allow local Habitat organizations to choose whether to use the previous simplified reporting or the more complex TRID reporting. The BUILD Act is supported by Habitat for Humanity International and the National Housing Conference. In closing, I want to reiterate that the purpose of this bill is to help nonprofits spend more time fulfilling their mission of providing low-cost housing to needy families and less time sitting in an office doing regulatory paperwork. The BUILD Act recognizes that one size does not fit all when it comes to regulating these charities and gives them the flexibility to choose which mortgage disclosure forms work best for them. Mr. Speaker, the BUILD Act passed the Financial Services Committee with a unanimous vote of 53-0. I urge all of my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back.